All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. The Philadelphia 76ers first tried a doc, and now they're putting their faith in a nurse to lead their team. After the Sixers fired Doc Rivers a few weeks ago as their head coach, they have now turned to former Toronto Raptors head coach Nick Nurse to lead their club. In 5 seasons in Toronto, Nurse led the Raptors to a record of 227 and 163 in the regular season, while it was highlighted by him guiding the franchise to their first and only NBA championship in 2019. Under Nurse, the Raptors missed the playoffs in 2 of the last 3 years, but we never knew what he could have done in Toronto. And the reason why I say it is this: Kawhi Leonard left right after that championship run and free agency to join the Los Angeles Clippers. And that following year, the shortened season, the Raptors still went 53 and 19 without Kawhi, got to the conference semis in the playoff bubble. Then the 2020-2021 season was a very trying one for the Raptors because they didn't play any home games. They played any home game that they had technically was down in Tampa. So they were constantly on the road all season long. They finally got back to Toronto for last season when the COVID restrictions were lifted. They went 48 and 34 and got to the playoffs. And this past year they went 41 and 41 and made the play-in tournament. And the writing on the wall was there for Toronto to start a rebuild, and the powers that be there just did not want Nurse to be a part of it. But nonetheless, aside from not having Kawhi, we also saw some of the key players for that championship team age. So we really don't know what could have been for the Toronto Raptors there. Nonetheless, you're talking about a guy in Nurse in 5 years as a head coach in the NBA, only posting one losing record. And that year came under some extremely difficult circumstances for him to deal with: the Toronto Raptors, the NBA, and so many people throughout this world, period. But nonetheless, the question is going to be, now that Nick Nurse is in Philadelphia, can he get the most out of this underachieving 76ers team? 6 trips to the postseason in the last 6 years for Philadelphia, but they have never been able to advance past the second round. Plain and simple. You're talking about a team that won 54 games this past season in the regular season. Their best run since 2001, which was their last Eastern Conference championship. But nonetheless, they still cannot get past the second round. You have an MVP on this team in Joel Embiid. Of course, another question is going to be, will James Harden stay in Philadelphia? There were rumors, and they're only rumors, that James Harden was not a fan of Doc Rivers. I'm not sure. But the 76ers are trying to appease James Harden. But even with that said, it's not a guarantee that James Harden's going to stay. We have to wait and see what happens in free agency. Aside from Embiid, you definitely still have Tobias Harris, PJ Tucker, who is a defensive specialist, and Therese Maxey. But I look at it like this: the parameters are there for the 76ers to win. And honestly, I feel that Philadelphia's best chance to have gotten it done was 2 years ago. And of course, we're always going to remember their second round loss to the Hawks for, the infamous Ben Simmons player, the not play, if you will, by Ben Simmons late in that contest that kind of summed up things for him in the city of brotherly love. But nonetheless, you look at the 76ers, they consistently find a way to hinder their own chances. I mean, you go up 3-2 in the conference semis this year on the Boston Celtics. You got game 6 in your building. You're right there with about 5 minutes left, and then you just go blank. And then that performance that entire team put on in Boston for game 7. I mean, I don't even know why you went up there if you're the 76ers, if that was a performance that you're going to go out there and make. I'll tell you like this: you can keep changing the coaches all that you want in Philadelphia. First, we saw Brett Brown get the blame, even though, he was part of the rebuild and trusting the process. And then finally, when they underachieved in the postseason under Brett Brown, it was time to move on to Doc Rivers. And then from there, we got a seasoned head coach in Doc, and the Sixers team still can't get past the second round. At some point, you got to look at the players, plain and simple. Who of the players that have been there for all of this underachievement? And honestly, at the end of the day, the blame has to go for them. Doc Rivers, say what you want about him. I know his postseason track record, sans being a part of the championship with the Boston Celtics in 2008 has not been good. Brett Brown was a part of the rebuild. Now you're getting another championship caliber head coach and Nick Nurse. At the end of the day, it's put up or shut up. And I will say this genuinely, with a head coach with a veteran team, the best opportunity for him to win is in his first year. And I say that because his message is still fresh. He hasn't, worn things out, if you will. And if you look at Nick Nurse prior to taking over as the head coach of the Raptors, he was an assistant coach there for Dwayne Casey. And of course, he replaced Dwayne Casey when his teams consistently came up short. And of course, we know that Toronto in those days could not get the best of LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers, but a lot of teams can say that regardless of what conference we're talking about. Prime LeBron was very tough to beat, at least in the first couple of rounds of the playoffs. But nonetheless, it's a scenario right here. Maybe Nick Nurse is going to be the voice that the 76ers need. But at the end of the day, all of the guys that put on that uniform are the ones that need to look in the mirror and do the soul searching. So, again, you can change the head coaches all that you want. But until the guys go out there and change their attitude, the guys that have the basketball in their hands, it won't amount to a hill of beans. So it's interesting. It's something to talk about with Nick Nurse being the head coach of the 76ers. But let's see if he can change the dynamic postseason wise, because regular season wise, we know what Philly can do. But postseason, this is where this team is going to be judged. So it's going to be interesting to see if Nick Nurse can change that dynamic. But at some point, if the results continue to not be what people expect them to be for this team in the postseason, at some point, you've got to blame the players. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I'm signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.